I just watched Aileen, Queen of the Serial Killers. And I remember hearing about her a long time ago, when I was a kid. And she was lumped in with people like Ted Bundy, all these male serial killers of the 80s. And she was different because usually women are not very violent in that way whenever they kill. Usually it's like poisoning their spouse kind of thing. So typically this kind of violence is predominantly a male serial killer thing. And she was a sex worker, and usually people who do that are typically victims of these male serial killers. So that's what set her apart, and I think really got people interested in her because she was not the norm. For the most part, I mean, I've been watching true crime since I was a little kid and grew up watching Unsolved Mysteries with my parents. And when I learned about her, I think I kind of just on face value just wasn't that interested because she was very, from what I understood about her at the time, was she lied all the time. She was very, like, when you would see her talk, she was just very kind of crazed, very seemed all over the place. But it's been a long time since I heard anything about her. I believe she was executed in 2002. So it's been, how long has it been? 23 years since she's been gone. And I haven't heard much about her really probably since then. And so when I saw that this documentary was coming out on Netflix, I was interested to watch it just because I hadn't heard about her in so long, and I wondered if there were things I didn't know. And there were, I would say the documentary maybe gave me a little bit of an insight into aspects that I wasn't aware of just because I was so young when this story was really out there. But I feel like the documentary also skated over a lot of things. They didn't really go super into detail with her backstory, with how she grew up and everything. Before I watched the documentary, I looked at just the Wikipedia about her, and of course, Wikipedia, some of it I'm sure could possibly not be true, but I feel like I would have liked to have known a little bit more about that. But with the trial and things that happened after that, there were some things that I didn't know about, but are also really common weird like phenomena that happens after someone is caught after, the serial killings. Um, so a lot of the things that you see with male serial killers also went along with her, like the fans and weird things like that you see. I'm sure that has a name, like some kind of a, so the documentary just takes you through it. It very briefly talks about um, her, like where the crimes happen, a little bit about the victims, um, a little bit about her childhood, and then really mostly about her interviews, like before, during, and after the trial, and a little bit about her execution. It's a very, I probably use this word, digestible, um, quick watch. It's, I don't know, maybe around an hour and a half. So, but I would say I would recommend watching it. I mean, it's worth watching. But I think I'll probably get into some of the details. So if you haven't watched it, or if you're not familiar with Aileen, then watch the documentary and come back and Let me know your thoughts. So, documentary starts talking about in 1997 she wanted to get right with God, because don't all inmates, when they go to jail, they suddenly, I don't know if it's because they don't have anything else to do, or if it's the only way that they can cope with a death sentence or being in jail for the rest of their life, but so many people always find Jesus. And so she wanted to get right about her past and her crimes. And I don't know if I knew this before or if I just forgot, but these crimes took place in Florida. And I actually spent a lot of my life in Florida. I guess I would say, if I'm from anywhere, I'm from Florida, even though I wasn't born there, but I spent the majority of my life there. So it was interesting to be reminded that this happened in Florida, but it was further south than where I lived. I lived in the Panhandle area, and the victims were 7 white, middle-aged men. I don't know why I thought that there was more victims than that, but this next part of the documentary was wild to me. So when Jackie, I think they pronounced her name Giroux, became aware of Aileen, before she was even caught, when she found out that there was a female serial killer in Florida, she went from Hollywood to Florida, putting notes in all these bars, basically as an ad to whoever was this female serial killer. And she was leaving on these notes saying, I want to tell your story, get in contact with me. And it's like, regardless of whether these men were bad men or not, people are just missing the point. Like, it's all about the sensationalism and making money, making movies. It's like, if it were the other way around and it was another male serial killer, I doubt that somebody would be putting notes out there like, at this time, being like, get in contact with me, let's make some money off of your killings. Like, it is wild to me. And so it's because it's like, regardless of like the character of the men that she killed, we still can't just be going around killing folks for any kind of reason. And so it's like, you really shouldn't be sensationalizing and giving these people book deals and movie deals and stuff. I'm baffled. And then something else that baffled me, I'll get to in a minute, but this reminds me of, I'm probably gonna butcher the name, but it doesn't matter because he was a cannibal. Isai Sagawa. So it reminds me of him because he was a cannibal. I cannot remember where it was, but it was a long time ago. And he cannibalized a woman that he had a crush on, and he became a celebrity. I think he wound up, but I haven't looked into his story for a while. I had heard about it off of a podcast years ago, and I don't know if he served any prison time, but I know they became like a celebrity, which is crazy because it's like when these killers become like reality stars, and it's like, these people are dangerous, right? Like, they don't suddenly just become less dangerous because they're in the spotlight. I mean, and then after Aileen gets caught, she immediately calls the producer and is like, hey, do you do movies or books? And it's like, what? What do you mean? And then she wasn't the only one getting deals and getting money off of this. Apparently, according to this documentary, the cops that were involved in this case got paid to consult with the people making these movies before the trial. And ultimately, rightfully so, they lost their jobs over it. And some of them, there's like footage of them being like, well, we just wanted to make sure that they got it right. And it's like, This is not what you're here for. This is not how the justice system should work. It is absolutely wild, but I'm very glad that they lost their jobs, because what do you mean? And so when she did get caught, they caught her with fingerprints. They found her fingerprints on some things at the scenes. And then at this point, they get into a little bit more into her backstory. So when she was caught, she was 34. And I'm at this stage in my life where, like, when these people that, when she got caught, I don't know, I was a kid. I was like, I don't know, what, around 10 or something. Now I'm older than she was when she got caught. And so it's like a weird, like, mind trick where I'm just like, oh my God, like, time is flying. I don't know, that just struck me. And so when they went into her childhood, all they said was that she was adopted by her grandparents when she was abandoned by her mother at 6 months old, when she was found in an attic with flies. And then her grandma died when she was 14. She ran away at 15 and went to a training school. I meant to look up what a training school is. I still don't know. I don't know. Maybe should I look it up really quick? What is a training school? Training school. Oh my God. Okay, so here I was thinking it was like a foster program or something, but it's exactly what it sounds like. It provides specialized hands-on instruction for a specific career or profession. So she went to a training school for 5 months, and then she ran away again, and she says that she was on the streets for 4 years and claims that she was assaulted over 30 times. But that's pretty much it as far as... And I guess because the information that I saw was on Wikipedia, I don't need to mention it because it's very possible that it's not correct. But I just really thought that they would go more into detail, because I've always heard that her childhood was really bad, but they really didn't focus on that. And they briefly mentioned that she had children in the documentary. I imagine that they are probably... like want to be anonymous, but I think that she had them like when she was a teenager, I believe. But the documentary literally, the documentary gives no details. Not that they, I mean, I'm sure, like, let's leave that person alone, like, I'm sure that would be horrible to grow up having that be your mother. But it says that she had one biological child that was a boy, and she gave him up for adoption immediately after his birth. So she did become pregnant when she was 14. And so online it says that she became pregnant after being assaulted by a friend of her grandfather. So that was one of the things that I read, was that her grandfather was abusive, but in the documentary she said that they were good people, her grandparents. So she went to a home for unwed mothers where she gave birth in 1971. Her grandfather forced her to give the child up for a closed adoption. Little is publicly known about the child's identity and where he is today due to the nature of the closed adoption. And it says she never had any other children. I mean, I wonder if he actually tried to find his parents, and if he found out that was his mother. That would be so sad to find out, like that's your mom. But I'm glad for him that we don't know who he is, because he deserves peace in his life. So then the documentary goes into her really toxic relationship history with men before she got into relationships with women. She, like, if a guy said that he was going to break up with her, she claims, now I pretty much take everything that she says with a grain of salt, because she will tell one story and then she will tell another story that's completely different. It seems like she's a pathological liar. But she claims that she once shot herself in the stomach, just missing her spine because a guy left her. I mean, I've heard like stomach wounds like will really, like, it's hard to come back from that. I just doubt that that happened, but I don't know. Now, the thing that always is so crazy to me is when these serial killers get caught and they get this publicity, they get fans, which is absolutely wild. And she was no exception. So there was a horse ranch owner that fell in love with her, and then a married couple adopted her. And keep in mind, she was in her 30s at this point. But in the interviews that she gives, she is so animated. She is never quiet. She just seems to love the attention. And later on, they talked to her girlfriend, Tyra, and according to her, she got Aileen to confess because she discovered what she was doing. Some of the information that they had out there when they were trying to capture whoever was doing these crimes, Tyra kind of put it all together and realized that it was Aileen. And also Tyra did not want to be linked to anything, so she cooperated with the police. She wore a wire, eventually got Aileen caught. So this trial is not without its controversy. So from the beginning, there was a female judge, and she wound up being removed from the case, seemingly because she was a woman overseeing a case for a female serial killer. And she says that it's because she intended to give her a fair trial. And later on, it does seem that she wasn't exactly given the fairest of trials. From what it seems that we find out later, it's kind of wild what we find out. So initially, Aileen said that all the killings were in self-defense. And when she gives her testimony, because it looks like the trial was televised, when she gives her testimony, when I first watched this, she seemed really believable to me. But I think that's a testament to how good of a liar she is, because when you think about it, you know, she killed 7 men. How likely is it that all of those were self-defense, you know? So that was my thought process at the time. Is like, at first I was like, she seems really believable. But then I'm like, they were all self-defense though. Like I could believe 1 or 2, but I feel like 7, it's kind of like, you know, if you find that everybody has a problem with you, the problem is probably you. You know, like that's just kind of where I was with it. But I was a little torn at this point when I was watching the documentary, because I was like, is she telling the truth? You know, because it's been a long time since I have heard anything about this. And so I wasn't sure, but then I kept watching. And so a lot of times, you know, if you watch a lot of true crime like I do, you know that typically they're not allowed to bring evidence of past crimes in. However, the prosecutor was friends with the judge, and the judge seemed to let that friendship allow him to bring in evidence that he never had, types of evidence that he never let in before. Kind of seems like there's a little bit of bias here. And so she was only on trial for 1 killing, but the prosecutor was able to get the judge to bring in evidence of the 6 other killings that she admitted to. So she had not been convicted of those. She'd not gone on trial for those, but she had admitted to doing them. And so they brought the admission of those into the trial. And that's what won it for them, because the prosecutor was saying that if that had not been brought in and the case was based off of just this one killing alone, they probably wouldn't have won, because it's like I said, her testimony was pretty convincing. And so with these trials, you know, it has to be if there's reasonable doubt, they have to let the person off. And without this other evidence that probably shouldn't have been let in, she might have been freed. So after she got convicted, she gets the death sentence. And then she's been saying all along, off and on, that she wanted it because she just wants to be done and she wants to go to heaven because, you know, she found Jesus. And then later on, there's an investigative journalist that finds in the prosecutor's records, this one right here made me just be like, what? So in the prosecutor's records, okay, all she had to do was look, because apparently he didn't. So according to him, he just trusted his team blindly and didn't look at anything. Because in his records, the victim that she was on trial for, Richard Mallory, he had assault charges in the past. He was diagnosed with emotional disturbance, poor impulse control, and the doctor who ran the institution where he was held said that he had potential of danger in the future. And so when this investigative journalist tells the prosecutor this, he's like, blink, 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 blink. And then later on, like after being called out for not letting this information that he had be let into her trial when it possibly could have helped her, he says still that that information would not have been relevant according to him. And I'm just like I'm surprised, but not surprised, because if you, again, watch as much true crime as I do, from investigations to trials, some of them are just all the way messed up. And there's a lot of innocent people in jail and have been on death row. I'm not saying she was necessarily one of them, because we still have more to go over, but that prosecutor and that judge, they were corrupt. Absolutely. So later on, after some time in jail, Aileen wants to make some confessions because she is into Jesus big time bad, are the words that I remember her saying from the documentary. And so she admits that part of her testimony was a lie. And that's what I was saying, that she is such a good liar, because that testimony was so believable to me. She claims that she only lied about the part where supposedly he sodomized her, but everything else is true. She said she lied about that because when she was caught, she had said something about that, but she said she wasn't in her right mind. She was worried about her girlfriend and she was like out of it. But she said that she had to be consistent, so she had to put that part in there so that her previous statements made sense. But then she goes on and talks about a couple of the other victims, and she says one just assaulted her and did not R-word her. I'm not laughing about that, but YouTube and I don't know, places are weird about certain words, so I sometimes don't know what to say. And then another one was just a drug dealer, and she killed him because he did drugs. So everything is kind of like unraveling. Like, she can lie so good and really convince you that she is a victim. And then later on, you get whiplash because it's like, it swings right the opposite way. And she's like, first, she's like, I'm innocent. I didn't do this. Or she's like, I was the victim and I was doing it because these people hurt me. And then she'll swing the opposite way and be like, yeah, I did this. I'm a serial killer. I'm horrible. Give me the death sentence. Like, you don't know what's true. And with people like that, you're never going to know, and you're never going to believe anything that they say because they're not consistent. So she, again, after this, says she wants the death sentence to happen. So she volunteers to die. She says, I would absolutely do crimes like this again because I hate people. And so when she finally gets the death sentence, it's 2002. And after it's over, somebody comes out and says a few words about it. And they say that her final statement said that she'll be sailing away with the rock and she'll be back with Jesus. Just like the movie Independence Day on the mothership, she'll be back. Those are her last words. And she had a childhood friend that met with her the night before her execution and was there outside of the prison when she was being executed. And her name was Dawn, and she talks about how finally, like, Aileen would never call herself a serial killer until the day before her execution. She said that she killed to rob and robbed to kill. And there was another person that became friends with her named Jasmine Hurst. I think she was Australian, but she was a artist and filmmaker who heard about her and really like identified or sympathized with her because Jasmine herself at 6 was abused. And like, that honestly made me so sad for her because I have a 6-year-old and like, I just could not imagine, like having a little kid be hurt like that and how that must really just mess you up for the rest of your life. So I definitely feel like Jasmine was well-meaning, but I think she might have had blinders on when it came to Aileen. But anyway, she was an artist and a filmmaker. She worked on women and children abuse victims. So like, I guess her work kind of centered around women and children who experienced that kind of abuse. But when Jasmine at the end of the documentary is talking to Dawn, she seems to justify what happened to these men because of Eileen's past of being assaulted by other men. And she's like forgetting that, these men probably didn't, hurt her. Like, it's very likely that Aileen was, just hit a breaking point and like had a lot of rage and wanted control. And it's very possible that these men really were just victims. And so, when Jasmine, like when Dawn is saying that like Aileen admits to being a serial killer and that she killed to rob and robbed to kill, Jasmine kind of like immediately reacts and says, yeah, but it's because she was abused in the past. It's like, yeah, but like, that's not an excuse to do what she did. It's not. If it were a male serial killer, we'd be saying, like, yeah, that's a really sad story. However, that doesn't justify what you did. And so I just feel like Jasmine seems like, a really nice, supportive person, but I think that the support and the sympathy was probably misplaced. And my final thoughts on it are, I think that many things can be true at the same time. So, Aileen could have killed them for no reason other than rage or control. The justice system can be corrupt, especially against sex workers. And she could lie a lot, and we'll never know the full truth. And she was abused in childhood. And, you know, in a lot of people's opinions, very obviously suffered from mental illness. All these things can be true. All of them. Doesn't have to just be one, you know? And I think that they were all true. I really do. I think that they were all true. And so, while I think that the documentary could have delved deeper into some things that I would have liked to have known about, I think it was a very interesting watch. Just absolutely flew by. So Netflix is definitely a place to go for some documentaries. But that's about it for this one. And yeah, happy Halloween.